Visibility of the spend. Now that's a key area. Absolutely. You talk about tech platforms. The biggest problem that I saw within large, huge global organizations around what was then just classed as consultancy. Let's park SOW as a term, but just consultancy work that wasn't contingent work, is how the hell do you find out, is it good value for money? Because you've got this complexity of, we're delivering an output normally, and that's got a scope attached to it, and it's got a price. And then there's some value component that the buyer's got in their mind that will be created off the back of this piece of work. Well, if you've got thousands of these contracts inside an organization, how as a procurement person do I cross compare to see if we're getting good value for money? Because all of the statement of work at the back in the schedule, they're all different. It's really hard to work out in a typical category where I can get down to some kind of unit price, whereas contingent workforce was great in many ways because the unit price was worker rate. So I could work out what the worker pay rate was. I could go across an entire organization. I could pull that data. I could do comparisons by department, by worker type, by category, and I could try to work out where maybe there's some more value to be created. Very difficult in consultancy-based work to find out am I overspending? Really hard to tell.
And this is basically our kind of reason for existence, in the sense
right.
you have to capture the process. So unless you capture the process, the full source to pay process at a granular level, you're never going to have that data. Now it's still complex because it's not just a question of buying, 50.
You're not buying widgets.
No. You're not buying the fabled red widgets. You're not buying an hourly rate. But you can still make comparisons if you get that data. But the other thing to consider is projects are different. Everything's always different.
Yeah.
I think companies make the mistake of trying to take a contingent workforce viewpoint or staff or viewpoint of consulting in a lot of
Absolutely.
cases, where they'll go, oh, well, the day rate with these guys is cheaper than the day rate with those guys. but consultancy A might take twice the amount of time and do a rubbish job. So
it's nonsense.
If you capture the process,
yes,
that's the problem to solve, number one, and that is where the market is way behind, for example, contingent workforce.
And when you say capture the process, so the source to pay process, which we both recognize, are you talking about the entire, from when I've got a requirement in my hand right through to the offboarding at the end of the consulting project? Is it that whole end-to-end process?
It is, yes. It's the absolute end-to-end process. It actually goes beyond that into this kind of supplier performance scenario. However, probably the most critical area is actually capturing the delivery phase.
Yes, absolutely.
Because
absolutely,
what will happen a lot of the time, that we see all the time, is a statement of work is agreed, and there's a contract which may or may not have milestones, which may or may not have changed, which probably haven't been measured, but it's just basically going to be stuck in a shared file somewhere.
Exactly.
And if procurement ever want to go back and analyze it, they're going to literally have to dig out all of these documents.
I remember it well. Absolutely.
Try and find the milestones.
We pull out the scanned copies of the signed contract. It wasn't even like it hadn't been turned into a text readable document. We'd literally get the documents out and go, I can barely read this. It's been scanned. And you'd be searching through the deliverables going, what the hell was this about? And did it get delivered? Where's the governance process that says, this is what we agreed, here are the milestone dates, here's the reports off the back of the milestones, which came out of the project governance group, saying, what did they achieve at this milestone? What was left outstanding? What was the variation? I mean, how do you do variation control in this? Because projects always get varied.
Exactly. So if you're ideally, you want to capture the whole process.
Yeah.
And from our point of view, it might be that a PO starts in a central procurement system, source to procure to pay system. Yeah. The PO comes to us, but then the requirement is in Xivio, and that follows through the whole process. So when you're actually defining milestones within a system and capturing that feeds into the statement of work. So you already know what the milestones are. It feeds into the statement of work, feeds into the contract process, but then most importantly, it feeds into the delivery process.
Yes.
So you have your milestones systemized. You can see, are they delivered on time, to budget, and you can also see how many change requests, what's the variation in scope.
Exactly.
And when you get this information and it flows through, and you combine it with the qualitative data, you've got all your quantitative signals and your qualitative data. Did they do a good job? what do we want to measure them on from a qualitative point of view? It
Yeah.
might be sustainability, innovation, whatever it is. Once an organization has defined that, they've got their qualitative and quantitative measures, which can give a combined overall understanding of how well that supplier did.
Yeah.
And you can look at, there's so many useful things you can look at, like, okay, across our supply base for this type of project, what's the average cost overrun? How successful are suppliers in their bids? How often do people just have massive scope changes where they quote quite cheaply and it ends up being really expensive?
Correct.
Et cetera, or where milestones might look great, but the qualitative score is terrible.
Yeah.
But so if you capture the process, then you have the data, then you have the power to start making these strategic type decisions.
Yeah.
And move away from, trying to compare hourly rates or, and you can make meaningful supplier to supplier comparisons. Yeah. Even if the types of projects they've worked on have been slightly different, because you're comparing the same metrics.
I mean, that I do quite a lot of work in the agency world, marketing agencies. So not recruitment agencies, marketing agencies. Okay. Very similar problem is that I'll help a marketing agency negotiate a contract with a supplier based off the back of an RFP. Every RFP that I see from procurement is you've got to put in your hourly rates. So what are the grades of people? How many hours are they going to work on the project? What's the hourly rate? And that again, all adds up to a number at the bottom. And you have to comply or else you're out of the game. But we normally would comply and not comply, because we'd say, you're not buying hours. And don't try and negotiate the price down by chipping away at the hours of the director, the manager, the creative person, the SEO person, and changing the hourly rate in line with your rate. It doesn't work that way. You're looking for a business result. You can't get a business result by buying activity. And it's a really important point is that, and again, a lot of marketing procurement people and consultancy procurement people, your natural tendency is, how do I compare? I'll go to rate card because I understand rate cards and how many days they're going to do on it. And it's just, we all know it's a bad way to buy, because that does not equate to value at all.